Right, well, hello. I've just walked along that path from Willesden Junction station, which is called the Salter Street Alleyway. There's a sign over there that tells you that's what it's called. Salter Street Alleyway. So I've come down here, effectively to Hythe Road, although this is Salter Street, to take a bit of video of some of the buildings that are left behind. These are industrial manufacturing buildings left behind from the 1890s onwards. So this particular building, I believe, is the Bostwick Gate and Shutter Works, if I'm right, or the last remaining bits of it. As you can see, quite old, although those windows are from a sort of mid-20th century or thereabouts. And the building goes back a fair way. As you can also see, that quite a lot of this stuff is newer, from probably the 70s, 1970s, 80s. So this bit's called the Triangle Business Centre. So I can't actually see the back of that Bostwick Works. I can stand back away from it. So there's not much to see here in terms of old buildings, but that one there is quite nice. There's nothing particularly amazing about them in terms of anything particularly distinctive, but they are interesting for someone like me who likes industrial architecture and history, just because they're still here. Because London is losing vast swathes of old manufacturing buildings. So it's losing in a way its own traces of its manufacturing past, of which London had a lot of. Nice old sign here that says Scrubs Lane, which isn't that far away. We're going underneath the railway, which I think is the overground line. Now, someone said to me recently, oh yeah, there's not much down here. Well, there are a few bits and pieces, and of what there is, they're quite worthy. And the particular reason why I've come down here is because a lot of these buildings down here have been owned by car giants. As you can see, there's a sign in the distance there. And Car Giant, I don't know how long they've been around for, but they've owned a lot of these buildings for probably the better part of 25, 30 years plus. And part of the reason why so many of them have survived is because Car Giant had them. And so nothing really happened to them. So this one that says Car Giant on the side, that is really more, I would say that's probably dates from the 1950s. But on the other side of the road, there's some older buildings which have survived. One, there's a calf down there. That's looks like an old substation building, perhaps to do with the railway. But there's a lot of nice old brickwork. I do like old bricks, and often these walls are what's left behind from the old factories that were taken down. So the first building we're going to get to on this walk round Hythe Road, you can see in the distance there, it does say Hythe Road. Let's just focus in on that, if we can. Please, there, Hythe Road. So Hythe Road goes along here to the end, but it also comes around to this bit. And the first site, where all that's really left is a brick wall, I believe that this particular site was a printing works for J. Lyons & Co., which was a very large concern that some people will be aware of. They made Lyons made ice cream, which is still sort of exists, I think, as a name. But they also made cakes and biscuits and bread and all sorts of things. A huge catering company that had shops, Lyons corner houses. So these gate stanchions are a remnant of that site. So it was a big stationery works, printing works. Nothing, you can't actually, unfortunately, see through all this sheeting. So I don't think there's anything left. This building, as we're coming up to here, is an emergency water supply building. Or at least it says emergency water supply on the side, which is a right remnant of war years. See, it says. There's the W, there's the S, and the E presumably was there. So it does look to me like actually Car Giant have left. I'm just looking through the gap there. This particular set of buildings that were behind on this site, which you could have got into when Car Giant was still going. I didn't realise they'd shut down. I know that they are supposed to wrap up completely by the 24th of April. That's what I'd read. Because it means that basically Car Giant is not going to carry on. And this site therefore is going to be basically open for development, I'd imagine. There's a scaffolding company on that side. So from the air you can see a lot more, but from roadside you can't. But I promise you there are a few bits that you can see. If not, it's going to make for a very, very dull video. So I've just noticed over there, that is a maintenance depot for what appears to be human forest bikes. So that's quite interesting. Like immediately, so you put a camera on someone, they're suspicious. But that's, I didn't realise that's where they were. That's where they bring the bikes to store them and repair them, maintain them. That's not a particularly old bit of wall, but it is part of the big blue building that's in the distance. Because this is fencing which dates from around about 1940, believe it or not. So it looks like Car Giant is still sort of here. So again, you can see in the distance there, that one there that's got Car Giant on the side. That is an old building that's got a cladding. And that's the case with a lot of these buildings. They were clad over and covering over what's there, but they are brick built factory buildings. So they really have sized down their operations. So these buildings here, this site here was a glass factory, and it was, I believe it was XXX who made glass for cars, and the name still exists. Over in the far distance there is actually an old sign which I can't get any closer to, but it says 1911, and I'm not sure if this was in fact James Baker and Sons, who made machinery for the baking industry. I thought that was somewhere else, but I mean, one of these sites was. These are all later buildings, but like I said, behind all that cladding is an old building. Let's see if I can get in. So I'm going inside that building now. You can see all the old steel work. So it would have been quite a sight. I imagine this steelwork supported gantries that went across the top of the building. And then this bit we're going into now looks a bit older. The steelwork looks a bit older, and the brickwork looks a bit older too. So I think this is a lot older. And this could very well be James Baker's, which then became part of the Perkins group, I think. Yeah, so this is much older structures. So I think this is possibly Baker's. It's hard to tell because you have to look on old maps to work out what things are, and often it will just say factory. I mean, these could be converted into something. I'd hate to think that they'd just be pulled down, but I fear they probably are. So this is inside another one of the buildings. You can see all this steelwork above. I'm not sure how old this one is, but I mean, it was probably early 20th century at least. So this is inside the Rolls-Royce building, and I can tell you more about that in a minute when I go outside back onto the main road. Be careful what I'm filming. Another little sign of its past are these vents at the top, which are extraction, which would indicate that this is where paint spraying took place, because this was, as I say, Rolls-Royce, but it was the Mulliner Park Ward coach building division. So I'm back out onto Hythe Road now. This building was owned by Rolls-Royce, and it was finished in 1940, so that's just 1 year into the war. And this was where they had their main London depot for repair work. There's probably a lot of sort of paperwork being done here as well. But as things went on, it became also an operational base for the Mullingar Park Ward coach building side of the business. So from what I understand, partially finished cars came from Crewe, I think it was, where the main factory was, and came here for various bits and pieces to be added to it to give it a coach built feel, sort of personalised. And then no, she's got it wrong. The bodies came from Pressed Steel Fisher, I think that's what it was. And then they came here for the bits and pieces to be done, and then they went to Crewe to have the major work done on them, and then they were brought back again. It's a bit of a sort of complicated procedure, but that's the main entrance there. Nice building. I mean, people might say it's Art Deco. I don't think you can classify it as Art Deco. There's bits of sort of Art Deco-ish, but it's a bit late for Art Deco. But some nice those pillar bits there are quite Art Deco. And that was almost certainly, I can tell, that was an entrance in for vehicles to go in. It's been bricked up afterwards. So it's quite a substantial building. I would hate to think that would get lost in the process. I'm just going to the other side of the road. Seagull. Thank you. This used to be, because I looked on a map, this used to be Burgess. And Burgess used to make sauces, and my late father used to like particularly like Burgess's horseradish sauce, and we always used to have that at home for roast beef, etc. So I do know that name, but the building's long since gone. All these buildings here are all new, so it'll look back. So as I said, you can see it's a very, very long building, that. So you'd probably say to me, that's not a lot of stuff, Mark. There are bits and pieces inside all that lot which are of great interest. I think that it would be very surprising to see that building taken down. But you just don't know these days. Developers want to do stuff like that. So I think some of those buildings will probably end up being lost. Rather nice gates over there. I don't know whether that was to do with Rolls-Royce. Little mural here, which is almost certainly from I would say possibly the 1980s. Different times, because the Grand Union Canal's is just on the other side over that way. That makes another video, actually. It's probably worth me doing. And that goes underneath another bit of the railway, which is possibly the Great Western line. Let's have a little walk through. We're back out the other side of that bridge, and in the old days there used to be a sign on there on that bridge where it says this way for great savings, giant savings. It said XXX, and you can have proof of that if you go to a website called Real Streets, REEL, Real Streets, and you look in search for The Blue Lamp, a film from 1949 with Jack Warner. You will see there is a still from that film which shows you this road looking down, because part of the chase sequence at the end of that film, which is a very famous British film, was done in this area. They go down Hythe Road, and just these buildings are particularly nice. Now, I don't know whether these are under threat, but I mean, given the fact of how close this stuff is, I'd imagine that their days are possibly numbered. And there's more down that side, you see. Real characterful stuff. But see, that's not Hythe Road. That's something different. This is, I think, Scrubs Lane, if I'm right. You'll see that over there. Really very nice. So I think what I'll probably be doing now is I'll finish that video off there, because I'm now going to go onto the canal, which will take you along the back of those car giant buildings. So that'll be the next video afterwards, and get to see that. It's particularly nice, I think, from what I can remember. I just noticed over there some nice old windows. Yeah, I see that betrays the fact that it's an older, late Victorian, early 20th century building, but it's been clad, so you just don't know. And that's often the case, that people will say, well, I've been down there, and there's nothing really old there. And that's because often they will just look at the outside of a building that's been clad, presumably to keep it fresh over the years, but they don't know that actually behind that is probably nice old brickwork and nice old industrial building that's worth keeping. Certainly when you consider the threat that these developers have got. I can't understand why anybody would want to live around here, but there you go. Right, I'm going to go down to the canal now. Thanks for watching.